Oh, you can see the little numbers. Okay, cool. So YouTube, Facebook. I don't think Instagram is on here yet. Let's see. Streaming. Okay, streaming. Cool. Save. Oh, it doesn't see that one. Okay.
I got a feeling deep inside that you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live stream. Divorce is not a bad word, where Nakia and I will discuss all things related to divorce and finance. On episode 2, we will focus on navigating divorce in Texas. Yes, you have options when it comes to the type of divorce you would like to pursue, how to find the right attorney, and the costs associated with divorce. My name is Terry Ho. I am a certified divorce financial analyst, a CDFA for short. I help individuals and their families navigate through their finances during and post divorce and work alongside with your divorce attorney to make sure that your client or their client is receiving an equitable settlement. uh, One of the things I like to say is like, lawyers have the law down pat, but some may not understand certain financial vehicles, and those vehicles can be one of the largest assets that you may have to divide. That's where I come in to assist. Not only do I assist with the retirement vehicles, but I also show my clients the pros and cons of taking one asset over another. I mean, at the end of the day, guys, we're spending money here, and this is the money that you will be living on moving forward post divorce. So it is vital to have a CDFA such as myself on your divorce team. On my screen is my partner in crime for this live stream, Nikita Lamar of Lamar Legal Group. She is a family attorney based in the great state of Texas. I'll let her tell you a little bit more about herself.
Hi, my name is Nikita Lamar, and as Terry stated, I am a family law and divorce attorney in Houston, Texas. That's where my office is located, and I've been practicing since 2015 in this area specifically. So I've seen a lot, done a little bit as well. I'm very excited about the opportunity to share more about the area of divorce as a whole. And to be able to do it in a way in which it's not so much about terminology as it is explaining the nuts and bolts of how this thing works, because there's so much that we miss when we get the education in other areas. So I'm excited about the opportunity to present it in this way.
No, thank you so much. So, last episode, guys, we discussed Divorce 101. We kind of shared with you the process of how divorce works in the state of Texas. And so, this week, we want to explain the different options you have. You can take your divorce, whether it's the mediation, collaborative, or good old traditional way litigation. So, I'll leave it to Nikita to kick it off.
So, just briefly talking about the emotional and financial toll that, divorce can take on individuals and on families. And that is what we don't really talk a lot about, in my opinion. And also, we don't take those things into consideration a lot of times when we are talking about what kind of divorce that we want to have. And when I say that, a lot of times people are taken aback when I say what type of divorce you want to have, because the power is truly in the hands of the parties from the very beginning before attorneys even come into the picture. So when I explain it that way, people hopefully will understand that they drive the way that these divorces can go, no matter what type of divorce you decide that you want to pursue. So first, I guess we'll talk about uncontested divorces. And uncontested divorces are oftentimes talked about as agreed divorces. People say that they're agreed divorces. In these instances, that are far and few in between when you're talking about divorces as a whole. Um, the two parties have agreed to divorce, but not only have they agreed to the divorce, they have agreed to the terms of the divorce. I have people to call me and tell me all the time, Attorney Lamar, I have an uncontested divorce. Can you help me out? And when I ask them the questions and when I go down the list of all the terms that a divorce covers, especially when you have children involved, property, money, they don't have a uncontested or agreed divorce because they have not gone through all of the terms of the divorce and they have not agreed upon everything. Um, you in an agreed or an uncontested divorce, you reach the agreement together and it's without the involvement sometimes of the attorneys or any other parties. Sometimes you have it where individuals have drafted their own documents, meaning they may have a list of the division of property, a list of, what they want in terms of custody and child support. I have handled divorces like that before, but like I said, they're far and few between. Usually people aren't in a space to be able to sit down and make all of those determinations. So let's move on to what we call contested divorces. Those are divorces that are not agreed. Sometimes they do end up in litigation, meaning, a trial or hearings, but sometimes they actually end in mediation and you're able to reach an agreement still. But in contested, the most important thing to know about contested divorces is that if you hold all the way to trial, a judge or a jury in some instances will make the determination as to what's going to happen in your divorce. And I don't know about anybody else, but I would much rather be in that driver's seat if that's possible. But in a contested divorce, you don't have an agreement on usually more than one point, but sometimes it's just one point. Sometimes it's a kid issue, but sometimes it's a division of assets. It could be whether or not a person agrees that someone should receive spousal support. It could be a child custody, issue. Like I said, kid issues. It could be other terms of the divorce. If you're not in agreement on anything, on any of those points in any of those areas, even if you agree on two of those points, if you have four or three or two or one that you have not been able to reach an agreement on, that is a contested divorce. That is not an uncontested divorce. It's not agreed because you have not been able to reach an agreement on each and every point of that divorce. And I think that's what people miss.
And Nikita, when you talk about contested, this is not talking about like actually going to trial. This is just basically getting to the point where if you guys don't agree, the judge makes the final decision, but it's not necessarily taking it to trial. Or is that with going to trial?
Well, it like I said in the beginning, a contested divorce can end in a couple different ways. Just because you go into it and you're not agreeing doesn't mean that you don't go to mediation. You may be able to go to mediation, and you may be able to reach an agreement, or you may have to go before a judge. If you've tried mediation, if you have tried to speak with your spouse, if you've tried to through your attorney come to an agreement and you're absolutely not able to on one or two points, then you're going to have to go before a judge and they're going to make that determination. In some cases, not a lot of cases, but in some cases, a jury. You can select that as well, but that's kind of, I guess we'll get to it later on. But to answer your question, a contested divorce, it can end in it being amicable if you're able to reach an agreement in mediation. But if not, then you're headed before a judge or jury. And like I stated, that's one of the cons, in my opinion, of following litigation all the way through. But in some instances, it's just no way around it. So we that it is a necessity to have the avenue of litigation for individuals where you have, domestic violence issues as they relate to a party or a child, when you have situations where there are, division of assets and a person is hiding assets. So there's some instances where contested matters and litigation is absolutely needed, but not in every instance.
I see. Okay, great.
So let's move to mediation. Another way that persons can resolve their issues and come to an agreement is through mediation. I talked a bit about that before. Spouses who agree to go to mediation usually they're wanting to part as amicably as possible, but that's not always the case. And I'll give you an example. Sometimes people get to mediation because they want to, they choose to, they tell their attorneys, they say, hey, can we go ahead and go to mediation? Let's fast track it, see if we can make some headway with this, see if we can agree, at least agree temporarily maybe, and hold on some other issues. Sometimes they're able to do that. Sometimes you have a party who isn't interested in another party who is. So we will request of the court that we be sent to mediation. So the court can actually send you to mediation as well. So it's a few ways that you can get there. So some couples or parties are in a space of wanting to be amicable when they're in mediation. Some are not. Couples who want to have more control, more say-so in what goes on in their divorce, they will usually choose an avenue like mediation because they want to have more of a say. They don't want to leave it in the hands of a third party who doesn't know them. Now, I trust our judges. They're great. I'm not saying anything bad about them, but, when you just think about it from a human standpoint, this is a family that you've cultivated, whether you have children or not. This is a unit that you've cultivated. This is something that you've built. And although it's time for it to end in a sense, I would want to have more of a say so. So this is an avenue for people who believe that that's true.
So my question on the mediation side, is this the same thing as having like a neutral mediator that kind of goes through, they don't give you any advice, or is that something else I'm thinking of?
That's absolutely true. A mediator is a third party, and most of the time they're attorneys. When I choose mediators, I typically choose attorneys and judges who are retired or judges who are not on the bench anymore. I usually go for those, but you don't actually have to be an attorney to be a mediator, but you have to be trained. So that is a person who is a third party. I'm Southern, so I say they don't have a dog in the fight, which means that they don't have any say so. It doesn't benefit them one way or the other if you guys reach an agreement. Now, of course, bragging rights, because, the mediators say, oh, I have a 90% close rate. But beyond that, they don't have, they don't stand to gain anything because they're a third party just trying to help the parties reach an agreement, meet in the middle.
So they're the neutral party. So then if you have questions regarding your divorce, or if you should take one asset to another, that's really on to you, correct?
Yes. Now, remember, some people, when they're in mediation, they have an attorney, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a court-appointed mediation, for instance.
Okay.
So they have someone there. Most of the time people do, sometimes they don't. Which brings us to another point. Should I attend a mediation if I don't have an attorney? I would say no. Not just because I'm an attorney, but because of the implications, of what can happen afterwards if you're not able to consult with someone, especially the more assets that you have. If you have children involved, all those types of things. I would feel more comfortable, even as an attorney, having an attorney with me if I ever had to go to mediation or arbitration.
Because you can't reverse this once it's done in the decree. You can't
exactly.
why you're saying
Yes, when you come out of that mediation, you have in hand, if you're able to reach an agreement, what you have is called a mediated settlement agreement. And it is a contract everyone signs. I'm a mediator. I'm a family law mediator myself as well. So I'm familiar with the process, and everybody signs. If there's an attorney representing you, they sign, you sign on the other side. If there's an attorney, or if a person is pro se means without an attorney, then they sign themselves. But everybody signs, and that is a contract on which everyone is held accountable. Even if a person decides tomorrow that they're not going to sign the decree that comes from that MSA,
Yeah.
we could still send that through. Now, that's a story for another day, but I'm just saying it's serious business. You know, when you come out of there, you're coming out of there with a plan, with a contract that everybody is expected to uphold. So lastly, let's go to collaborative law. Collaborative divorce is, I don't like to say new, it's relatively a newish idea. I'll say 10, 15 years, maybe 20 here in Texas. But the goal of a collaborative divorce, the collaborative process, is to reach a positive agreement between all parties, that it's a team approach. And the difference between this and the mediation is that in a collaborative divorce, each party is represented by an attorney who is usually trained in the area of collaborative divorce. So that's one of the differences, one of the major differences, because it's still mediation is still a collaborative process, but a collaborative divorce is different in that both parties have representation. So you can ask your attorney, absolutely, what's the best, for me in this situation? Would it come back to haunt me later? If I take this deal, you have that. But the difference between that and having a attorney in a litigation mindset is, in collaborative law, is more of a team effort. People are coming to the table, including the attorneys, with the understanding that we want to be amicable. That's not always the case in the case of litigation. I mean, I've had some very good opposing counsels. We've been able to work things out, but the difference is, in a collaborative law approach, all parties are coming to the table with that mindset. So really what we're doing when we get there is we're saying, okay, what are the steps? We already know what we're going to do in terms of how we're going to handle this process, right? But what are the steps? And we have meetings and things like that where people bring in their information, their tax information, their information as far as what property they own as a party individually and as a unit, those types of things. And we work it out together. We also have the ability to create a team environment, meaning that if there's a need for a mental health professional, then we can bring that person in.
And that's on each side, not a neutral.
Yes, yes. And you really, what we prefer, right, is that the mental health professional will work with everyone.
I see.
That's the team approach, right? Because we want everyone to feel a part of what's going on. That's the point. That's the major point of collaborative law. And so because of that, we would like for those things to be done collectively, if possible. I mean, and sometimes everyone doesn't need that service, right? You might have one party who needs it in order to move through so that we can progress in the divorce. And in that case, we'll call that person in and all of that, and that person will be available.
So are all attorneys trained for this, or they're only specific that take on this training when it comes to the collaborative side? Because like you said, yes, it's not new, but it's new in regards to the traditional litigation way, things like that. That's absolutely a lot newer. So I haven't come across a lot of the collaborative side, but I think it's picking up traction in Houston.
It is. It's picking up traction, I think, in the state,
Yeah.
but definitely in Houston and Dallas area, Austin, those places for sure. And no, every attorney does not practice collaborative law. Um, you are supposed to be trained in that area. They have a few trainings each year. It's not many because we don't have a lot collectively. We don't have a lot of attorneys practicing in that area right now. Hopefully
Well,
that'll change.
so why would clients be, and I know you mentioned it, but like just to point it out again, why would this be a good route where clients would want to take on the collaborative side? Because
So collaborative approaches such as collaborative divorce, mediation, things like that, a person would benefit, or a unit, parties would benefit from this, in that it helps to keep the familial unit intact, in my opinion. Because even though, say you have children involved, right?
no.
Your parenting of those children should not end when the divorce happens, right? So we're gonna suppose that everybody is still gonna be involved. The less hostile that environment is, the less hostile it was to get to that space, in my opinion, the better off you're going to be. So that's a con, in my opinion. As far as money, because people like to ask, well, is it cheaper? I don't like to think of it in that sense, but I can give you some examples of how it could determine how much you're going to spend. Conflict, contested divorces, conflict equals money.
Yeah.
Conflict equals billing. It's
Yes.
no other way to think about it. Now, sometimes the conflict is absolutely necessary. I understand that. I handle cases like that. Cases, like I said earlier, where there's domestic violence that is taking place, or, whether it was in the past or recently or both, where there are child issues, related to some type of abuse. Those things you can't bargain away, right? You don't want to sit at a table and try to,
But I guess from my understanding is collaborative could also be like a faster process. It could be,
um,
depending if everybody agrees, you get through it together, you
it's
work.
possible, but I'm gonna say with the collaborative law process, not always.
Not
It
always.
could be more
That's your
amicable.
lawyer answer right there.
Yeah, no, and I'm gonna explain why. Because even though it could be amicable, right? If
Yeah.
you have a high net worth divorce, you just may have more assets to comb through. And although both parties want to be amicable, that doesn't mean that they're not vigilant and that their respective attorneys are not vigilant, right? So we could all be coming together at our meetings and getting things done, but it may still take us, a year.
I see.
Now that's
Okay.
not always the case though. That's not, so I don't want to say that that's never the case, but I just want to, make sure that we cover all bases. But
Understand.
it's definitely a better space to be in terms of being able to be amicable than not. And
Okay.
in a lot of different ways, not just money, but also time. Also, when you think about your ability to be able to co-parent, it's a lot of things that come into play when a person is selecting the type of divorce that they, want to pursue. And if nobody, if people don't remember anything else that I said, because we talked about a lot in this particular segment, just understand that you have the ability, you and your partner, you and your spouse, soon to be ex, whatever you want to call them, you guys have so much power in how your divorce is run. We understand that there are other factors that may come in that may make the environment such that it can't be amicable. But I always tell people, if you can select a more amicable way, then I would go for that for a lot of different reasons.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you so much for showing that. I think the next thing we want to kind of move on to is how to choose the right attorney. So there are times whenever clients may come to me and we talk about, they may come to me before they hire an attorney, and we'll talk
Mhm,
about the types of attorney they would want. And a
mhm,
lot of the times clients, they fall into the trap of like wanting to hire the most aggressive attorney, the
mhm,
sharp. But
mhm,
this is what I kind of tell my clients when I talk to them is like, sometimes that aggressive doesn't mean it's assertive or effective. Aggression, we know it's emotionally draining, first of all. So what
mhm,
I always advise them to do is, hey, yes, I get it. I get what happened. I know you want to go for it, but
mhm,
let's take a step back and just realize like if you are hurting from or angry with your ex and hounding them with an aggressive attorney,
mhm,
that make the situation better, or is it just going to promote more hurt, more anger long term, and may just even drag your divorce out even longer? So,
mhm.
Nikita, why is it important to have the right attorney represent you?
Oh man, for so many different reasons.
Well,
The emotional intelligence side of lawyering is one that we don't talk about enough.
yeah,
Not just from the aspect of a client selecting an attorney, but just from how an attorney runs their cases.
yeah.
You know, asking certain types of questions people don't think about, right? It's important for people to understand the difference between a person being diligent, representing you, in your best interest, and being a shark or a bulldog or whatever other animal people want to, use when it comes to attorneys. And I, very rarely, but I've even heard it, someone say that about me. And I don't necessarily think that that's a good thing unless I always ask. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, what does that mean? Tell me what it means. Because like you said, in some instances, if you have a situation where there's already fuel on the fire, there's some things going on, and then you have a person that comes in and they come in hot, and it may not be necessary. I always gauge with opposing counsels, even if it's a hotly contested situation. You want to test the waters because sometimes you can go in and you may be able to reach an agreement on some things that need to be handled immediately.
Yeah.
So I say all that to say that when individuals are selecting an attorney, there are some things that they should
What
should
are those?
look
Yes.
at. Communication style. Ask when you're interviewing your attorneys, because that's number one. Interview different attorneys. You don't have to interview 10. You don't have to, because some of those people are going to want or require you to pay
Yeah,
a deposit.
consultation. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you don't, just figure out maybe three or four, to start off, maybe just three. But interview different attorneys, because you're interviewing them and they're interviewing you as well. And so you want to make sure that you have enough information to make an informed decision. If you only talk to one person, that's a kind of limited view. Now, sometimes you may have a warm handoff, right? One of your coworkers had someone and you talk to them about their divorce, and they talk to you about how their divorce attorney handled their situation, and you liked it, and you're going through a divorce now. You say, hey, I want that person. Nothing wrong with that, but still make sure that you speak with them.
I would still say interview.
Yes,
Yes,
still
have that
make sure that
mind,
you
still
speak with
interview. Yes.
Yeah, talk to them, ask them what their communication style is. If
That's
you're
right.
a person who requires or who wants someone to touch base with them every week, then talk to them about that. Say, well, what's your communication style? How often should I expect to hear from you if that's important to you? you
Okay.
know and so, because what happens is, if you don't ask and you have this expectation and you never addressed it, then when the person updates you when something happens, then you're upset.
Got
Well,
it.
you didn't communicate that that is what you require. And on the flip side of that, the more communication we require, the more money we will have to pay, because these individuals are professionals, yes, and so they charge for their time. So that's
Okay.
another thing too. Talk to them about billing. If you know that you're tight with money, you need to let that be known. Why
Don't
do
be going to hold back. Is that's the
Right.
thing.
Why do I say that? Your
Yes.
attorney of all people need to know what your financial capability is. And you also need to know how that firm bills,
Yeah.
what they bill for, so that when you get the bill and you see that you talked to me for 30 minutes, you're wondering now why that's on the bill, because it's 30 minutes of my time.
And
You
as
know?
far as like finding like tips on how to find attorneys or where to find the attorneys,
Mhm.
what do you think is the best resources for,
So
anyone?
a lot. Referrals from trusted sources is always good. You have to be careful about the online stuff. I'm gonna tell you why. There's a lot of situations where individuals who maybe have never um, uh, uh, retained a firm, they may have been on the opposite side and then they go leave a crazy review. So just when you're going through the reviews, I'll say that just go through them and actually read them to make sure that they make sense.
Or not
But
one-off.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Not one that's like one-off because they had a bad day.
Exactly. Yeah. It's something, and it has nothing. Like you go on and it says nothing. Oh,
Yeah.
this attorney was horrible. Well, why? You didn't, because most of the time when people have something to say, and they will tell you what happened, But either way, just when you're looking online, just make sure that if you're doing some online research, that those are trusted and reputable sites. Avo is one that people have used before. I can't say that I would recommend it or anything, but that is a space. AVOO is a space. Avo, yeah, it's a space where a lot of attorneys are listed, and you can usually search by practice area. A good Google search will always, bring up some individuals, but even with those and even with the reviews, you want to make sure that you contact them and you get a consultation. And that's the other thing that I'm gonna say. Get a consultation, please. Whether it's free, whether it's paid, whatever, there are many attorneys who do both, but it's not uncommon for an attorney to charge for their time. But
Yeah,
get
absolutely.
consultations with these individuals and stop listening to your friends who've gone through divorces who tell you what you need to do, because everybody's situation is different. So you want something, as customized as possible when you're talking about a consultation. And usually those come with you having to put something, down on it. But I mean, you get what you pay for, right?
I agree with you. One of the things that I usually advise is like, and that's something that you said, besides communication skills, is also specialization. Because
Mhm.
depending on the type of assets you have, maybe search for an attorney that specializes in that area. For
Mhm.
example, if you have a lot of property to buy, maybe
Mhm.
focus on an attorney that does property division, maybe
Mhm.
child custody,
Mhm.
maybe businesses in that you and your spouse may share, and so forth. So
Mhm.
what I normally do is start there at least. Yes, know
Mhm.
your communication style, but know a little bit more about your case and what kind of types of asset that you have. Um,
Mhm.
and from there, I always say make a list and then create a timeline of your marriage and include all important dates, because this, while you're interviewing, this is the story that you will have to use to share and update your attorney every time you interview them, because you're telling them what's going on. So
Mhm.
that way it makes it easier for your attorney to kind of keep understand what's going on, but also keep you on track with any kind of important details.
Well, we like preparation for
Yeah,
sure. But we don't want people to get too bogged down, especially
yeah,
if they want to get the information, because sometimes you don't know what you need to know until you talk to us.
yeah.
But yeah, we love for people to be prepared, of course. If you could tell me when you're married, because I'm going to ask you that so that I know how long, ask you a few questions about your children, things like that. If you have a home, approximately how much, did you buy it for? Is there any equity in the, things like that? Of course, we would want you to have that information when you're speaking with us. But I do want to just briefly talk about specializations, because people get wrapped up in this too. Everybody does not need a board certified attorney. Some
Yeah.
people may. Some people absolutely may, like you said. If the person is a high net worth, If they have, very specific things that are related to, the fact pattern in their divorce, then they may want to have a board certified person. That I absolutely think that there's a necessity for those individuals, and it's an honor to be board certified in any of the areas.
Yeah.
But everybody does not need that, and more importantly, most people don't want to pay for that.
That's true.
That is expensive. Board certification is not an easy task, and that is a lot of extra information that a person had to expend money to obtain, and
Yeah.
because of that, it's going to show up on your end in the bill, and you don't some if a person, say we have an average divorce, where a person has a home, maybe 401k, something like that, you don't need a board certified attorney for something like that. You do
I
want
agree with
someone
you.
to
But
represent you, you know to the best of their ability, and all of that kind of stuff, but everybody doesn't need that, and everybody can't pay for that.
so, but you did say that if you're in that, rephrase that part, because you said that you may need it if you are high
I'll
net.
just say certain circumstances. I don't want to go into who,
Yeah.
because I don't even want to say every high net worth person needs a board certified attorney, because I've handled high net worth cases and in the millions, and I'm not board certified.
Yeah.
So, it just, that's why it's so important as well to interview, so that
Yeah.
if you have specific questions as it relates to your property division, like I said, specific to your fact pattern in your divorce, then that's why you want to, grab these consults. Yeah, because you calling me or my staff on the phone and wanting me to answer all of this in 5 minutes is usually not the best way to handle it. So I would say, grab a consultation so that you can ask those types of questions.
Absolutely. No, this is really good information. I don't think I meant to say like board certified. I think it's more specific.
No, I'm glad that you said it. Even though you said specialization, like, you could mean something like an immigration attorney, right? Because I've had people to call me and say, hey, I need a divorce, but I also have immigration issue. I make sure to let them know I handle family law divorces, and I have handled those divorces where immigration is an issue, but I pull in an immigration attorney because I'm not an immigration attorney.
Yeah.
There are some attorneys who practice both family law and immigration. Then that will probably be your best bet, But if you can't, yes, I have the capability, but I am going to consult with the immigration attorney on the case, because I want to make sure that I'm doing what I need to do.
Absolutely.
So just, as an example, those types of things.
Okay. No, this is really, really, really good information for people to kind of look out for. I think so. Next topic that I think everybody's kind of waiting for, or are waiting for, is just the cost of divorce. One of the things that whenever I sit down with clients or anything is asking them, hey, are you ready for this journey? I'm on there with you. I'll go through it with you, but are you ready physically, emotionally, but most importantly, financially? Are you going to be able to pay for all this? Because, it depends too. And I'm not going to say that divorce is not expensive, or it is expensive. It's just, it can. So
it can be.
Exactly. Are you ready for it? So Nikita, can you break down the various costs associated with divorce?
Sure. I mean, I can give you some examples. I may miss some things, but initially, when you look for an attorney, everybody wants to ask how much. So let's talk about retainers and such, right? Most attorneys, I'm not going to say every attorney, but most attorneys are going to require a retainer. And a retainer is just what it says. It retains the attorney's services for a certain amount of hours based on their hourly rate. Now, because there are different attorneys, we calculate that different ways. Most of us take 15 to 20 hours, and we multiply that by our hourly rate, and we say that's what, and we may add a little based on our knowledge of types of cases. But essentially that's what happens when you're talking about an attorney that requires a retainer and has an hourly rate, because you also have an hourly rate. On the other side, you have some attorneys who bill a flat rate, which means that they quote you a rate to handle your divorce or whatever family law issue, but we're talking about divorce right now. They say, give me this amount and I will handle your divorce start to finish. Now, normally they'll have a clause in there that says, however, if we have to go to trial on this, then another amount is due. And that is whether you have a retainer or a flat fee, because I say the same thing in mine. So we
I
do
say that too.
yeah.
As
So
an expert.
yeah, so we do that, right? So when you go in, you're going to ask, what are the fees? How much do how much is your retainer? So that's your usually initial cost, outside of if you have paid anything for a consult fee. We're just going to pass by that. That's gone.
Yeah.
So you'll pay the retainer, and then the retainer does not include court cost, any kind of additional cost outside of the attorney's work. Because remember, the retainer is for the work that the attorney is doing on your case, not any additional fees. So those are going to be charged outside. So filing fee for your divorce, filing fees for anything else that I have to file, anything I have to copy, if I have to send anything, certified, any of those types of things. Those are going to be costs that are outside. Mediation costs, whether you guys decide that you want to go to mediation or whether a court says that you have to go, and that's how you get there. Mediation fees are the party's responsibility. Now, yeah. So,
Nikita, are these like costs and stuff? Is this something that the client needs to know to ask, or is it kind of discussed in that?
No, it's discussed. It
I
is
see.
usually discussed in the beginning of your you retaining your attorney. They'll go over all of this, and usually it's also captured in your attorney-client agreement or whatever your contract is called with the attorneys, because we all call them different things. So usually they will go through all of these things, but just giving you an idea of some of the additional costs that may be associated. Also, just talking about cost in general and piggybacking on what we talked about before, heavily litigated cases, contested cases, whatever you want, those that are not agreed, those are going to be more expensive. So, when you come in and you say, hey, I want to fight, I want to do this, I want to call in a therapist, I think this person is psychotic, we need a doctor. Listen, that sounds great. Great. Do you have the funds for all of this that you want to do? Because you will be so surprised at what is connected to all of these things that you're asking for, and the money doesn't come out of thin air. You have to have the money up front for the attorney to perform these services that you're asking them to perform.
Is there any ways or strategies of minimizing costs? Perhaps?
Sure.
Yeah.
On the front end, of course, being more amicable where you can be. Does that mean that you compromise on important things? Absolutely not. I would never tell anybody to do that. There's certain things that you just cannot compromise on, and I understand why. Yeah. But if there are things that you can come to an agreement on, if you can go to mediation, that, of course, that's going to save you money. And I feel comfortable saying that, because I know that if you have something that can be settled in 6 months via mediation versus something that is drawn out over the course of 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, what do usually that's going to last, that's going to be more money that you're going to have to spend the longer that something lasts like that, especially if it's a heavily litigated case, meaning that we're always in front of a judge, right? So in terms of minimizing, some other things that you can do, to minimize the costs in your selection of the type of divorce that you want to, have. Of course, if you can go into mediation, or if you can go into collaborative. Now, understanding, like I said before, there are other factors in collaborative that can cause you to, expend more time there. But, you know, sometimes we can get done faster, and with, less resources.
So if someone comes to you and a client says, "Hey," and obviously we talk about cost, but what are
Mhm.
some ways that a client could help get, have money to pay for hiring
Mhm.
and going through a
So
divorce?
what I tell people, if I get the opportunity to speak with them before they actually file for divorce, usually I talk to people when they're about to file, but sometimes I talk to people before they make the decision. And I say, once you make that decision, right, and you say to yourself, this is the road that I want to go down, you want to start thinking about cost. You want to start thinking about how you can save, money. And also, some other things that people don't think about are asking family members. I know that sounds a little bit out of the way, but we do that for a lot of different things. We ask our family for a lot of different things. And I've had clients who have actually done that and they've been surprised. Also, there are new ways for individuals to finance their divorce. And you ask your attorney or the attorneys that you're interviewing, ask them if they have any payment systems available. Do they have any connections with payment processors that may have loans available? Like my firm, I do. Now, I can't guarantee that you're going to be able to get that amount or get the amount that you want, because they do base it on, credit history and things like that. But I can say that that's an option.
Yeah.
And a few of my clients have taken that option, because even though they have a job and things like that, they don't want to expend all the money up front, on the divorce. They may need that cash later for the divorce. So, it's a lot of different reasons why people have chosen loan options, but those are things that are available in some spaces, but you have to ask.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So as far as like clients utilizing money from a joint account, how
Mhm.
do you frown upon it there? I know the ideal way is to have your own account, have your own savings that you had in your name and use those funds. But most of the times, couples, they have joint accounts. So
You
could they use that?
That's murky. It's murky water, and so I don't want to really answer that. But what I can say is that, when you have joint accounts and things like that, those things are considered community property. So tread lightly. When I speak to people before they get married, one of the things that I always say is that it would be great to have separate accounts and have understandings from both parties that these accounts are separate. Usually you do that through a prenuptial agreement. But usually when people get to us at this state, is too late to talk about that. But for anybody else who may be listening who is not married, then definitely look into that.
I am a huge proponent of that. There is nothing wrong with that, to have a joint checking account, joint savings, but then also have your separate checking account and separate savings account. There is nothing wrong with that.
At all.
You.
Yeah.
Great. So yes, you did great. You hit us with, I know we hit you guys with a lot of information, but good information. Is there any kind of closing thoughts that you may have, Nikita, on everything?
Um, you know, I guess the only thing that I would say is what I said earlier. If people don't take anything else away from this particular live, I just want people to understand that they do have or possess the capability to steer, their divorce, both parties, and it doesn't mean that it's not emotionally taxing, even if two parties are amicable.
Yeah.
It still can be emotionally taxing, because it's changing of seasons. Things are different. It takes a while sometimes for your body and your mind and everything to catch up. But what I can say is that a lot of this is about mindset, more so than what people like to believe. and give credit to. So the better off that you are in that space, I think that the smoother your divorce can be. But also understanding that this goes for both parties, because you can also have a difficult divorce because one person does not have that mindset. So, if people can talk beforehand, if they're in the space to be able to do it, I say do it. Sometimes you can't. If you can't, then don't put yourself in harm's way, emotionally, physically, or otherwise. But if you can sit down and have a conversation with that person, then I say absolutely, try to do that and figure out between you two, how do we want to play this? Like, that's an important question. Like, how do we want this to go?
Yeah.
So I think that that's what I would, leave with. Conflict equals money. Sometimes it's necessary. If it is, go for it. There's certain things that we have that are priorities in our life, like our children, things that we worked hard for. But on the other hand, if there's a way for you to do this and have things to be more intact, especially if children are involved, then I would say, look at that. Try to look at that space.
No, that was such good advice. Very, very good advice. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in with us on Divorce is Not a Bad Word, episode 2. If you missed it, no worries. The link to the stream will be in my bio and also Nikita's, so you can listen to it at your own pace. Again, if you know anyone who's contemplating divorce or currently going through a divorce, send in this stream to them. Nikki and I just want to provide valuable resources to anyone that needs it. With that being said, and how Nikita closed it off and said, mindset is everything. And that's what's going to help you with the cost of your divorce. Our next live stream will be on Wednesday, May 3rd, titled Mindset Equals Money. We believe that your divorce team should include an attorney, a CDFA, and a therapist to kind of help navigate you through the process. And with that being said, we will have a guest speaker who is a certified therapist to discuss how important it is to get your mind right before, during, and after a divorce, and how it could potentially save you overall money. So mark your calendars, and we will see you next time.
I got a feeling